In the 30th millennium, when the Emperor of Mankind still walked among his armies, and the Great Crusade stretched humanity's reach across 1,000,000 stars, even he could not predict every anomaly the galaxy would produce. The Imperium's expansion was built on calculated violence, legion after legion bringing compliance through bolter fire and blade, exterminating Xenos' filth and reuniting lost human colonies under Terra's banner. The Emperor's psychic might illuminated the warp like a blazing sun, guiding his fleets through the immaterium to reclaim what was rightfully humanity's. But on the mining world of Gehenna Prime, during what should have been a routine compliance action against greenskin infestation, reality tore open with impossible light, and something stepped through that made even the master of mankind pause. The warp rift manifested during the final assault on the Orc stronghold. A vertical slash in space-time that vomited colors the human eye was never meant to process. The Imperial Army's 203D expeditionary fleet immediately went to combat alert. Astartes of the Luna Wolves surrounded the rift with bolters raised, their enhanced physiology allowing them to process the impossible angles and non-Euclidean geometry bleeding from the tear. Tech priests screamed binary warnings as their augmetic sensors overloaded, trying to categorize what emerged. A single figure walked out, brushing dust from a yellow suit and red gloves, completely bald, his cape fluttering despite no wind on the ash-choked planet. "Huh," Saitama said, looking around at the scorched wasteland, burning Orc fortifications, and several hundred space marines aiming mass-reactive weaponry at his face. "This isn't the supermarket." The Luna Wolves' Captain Garviel Loken raised his fist, holding fire. The strangers showed no weapons, no armor beyond that ridiculous yellow costume, and yet every tactical instinct Loken possessed screamed that something was profoundly wrong. The man radiated nothing, no psychic presence, no tech signature, no biological markers that made sense. He was simultaneously there and not there, like a hole in reality shaped like a human. "Identify yourself," Loken commanded, his voice amplified through his helm's Vox grill. "You stand before the legions Astartes of the Emperor of Mankind. Compliance or death?" Saitama scratched his head. "I was just trying to buy groceries. What's with all the military stuff? Is this some kind of war?" 300 bolters clicked to ready position. Loken's secondary heart accelerated. The stranger's casual tone, his complete lack of fear in the face of the Imperium's greatest warriors, suggested either suicidal ignorance or confidence backed by capability. Loken had seen both. The first ended in blood. The second ended in much more blood. "This world is under Orc infestation," Loken explained, buying time for sensor data. "We are prosecuting compliance. State your allegiance or be classified as hostile Xenos." "Xenos." Saitama blinked. "I'm human. Look, I don't know how I got here, but I'm not looking for trouble. Just point me toward the nearest city, and I'll figure this out." He started walking forward. "Halt." Saitama stopped, genuinely confused by the wall of armored giants treating him like a threat. In his world, heroes and monsters fought constantly. These soldiers seemed professional, but their armor looked weirdly medieval despite the sci-fi weapons. And nobody was smiling. Actually, everyone seemed really serious about everything. The air pressure changed. Reality bent. Every Luna Wolf dropped to one knee in perfect synchronization, a gesture of respect so ingrained it was instinctive. Saitama felt it before he saw it, a presence that made his skin prickle, a weight of attention that felt like standing under a spotlight powered by a star. Golden light bloomed across the battlefield, and he walked forward. The Emperor of Mankind was tall even by Astartes standards, clad in Baroque golden armor that hummed with barely contained power. His face was simultaneously the kindest father and the most terrifying warlord Saitama had ever seen. Features that shifted depending on how you looked at them, as if humanity's collective need for a savior had been poured into flesh and set loose upon the stars. Psychic energy cascaded from him in waves, invisible to baseline human eyes, but visible to Saitama as a shimmering heat haze that bent spacetime. But what struck Saitama most was the Emperor's eyes. They looked at him, truly looked, not through or around him like most people did after he'd broken his limiter. Those ancient, knowing eyes saw something, and for the first time in years, Saitama felt, noticed. Fascinating, the Emperor said, his voice resonating on frequencies beyond sound. You are not of this galaxy. Not of any galaxy I have seen in 10,000 lifetimes. He stopped 10 meters away, studying Saitama like a scientist examining a particularly interesting specimen. Your existence defies psychic law. You possess no soul I can perceive, yet you are demonstrably alive. Probability collapses around you in patterns that should not exist. Saitama shrugged. Yeah, I get that a lot. People say I'm weird. I just do hero work as a hobby. Hero, the Emperor tasted the word. An antiquated concept. In this age, there is only loyalty to the Imperium or extinction. You will explain your presence, your nature, and your purpose. The crusade has no room for anomalies. Look, big guy, I don't know what crusade means, but I'm not here to cause problems. Saitama's expression remained friendly but firm. I just want to go home. The Emperor's psychic gaze intensified, trying to peer into Saitama's nature. For a being who could read civilizations at a glance, who could see futures branching across probability, Saitama was blank. Not empty like a soulless pariah who repelled the warp. Blank like the universe had collectively decided not to compute whatever physics allowed this bald man to exist. You cannot go home, the Emperor said. The rift has closed. The warp anomaly that brought you here was triggered by entities that do not wish you to return. You are trapped in a galaxy at war, a stranger with power I cannot categorize. That makes you either a weapon to be wielded or a threat to be eliminated. Saitama's expression shifted slightly. Not angry. He rarely got angry, but disappointed. You're going to try to fight me, aren't you? If necessary. The Emperor gestured, and his custodian guard emerged from the shadows, spears crackling with power fields. But I am not unreasonable. Demonstrate your capability. Prove you deserve to walk freely in my Imperium. Around them, the ash wastes of Gehenna Prime stretched silent, waiting for the collision between casual heroism and calculated divinity. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character in the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. The demonstration began with a custodian. These were not space marines. The Emperor's personal guard represented the pinnacle of human genetic engineering, warriors who could duel Primarchs and survive. The one who stepped forward carried a guardian spear that hummed with disintegration field technology capable of phasing through molecular bonds. His Auramite armor was worth more than battleships. Defeat Valder, the Emperor commanded simply. Then we discuss your future. Constantine Valder, Captain General of the Legio Custodes, attacked without preamble. He moved faster than human eyes could track, spear thrusting for Saitama's throat with precision that could thread a needle at hypersonic speeds. The strike would have decapitated a tank. Saitama caught the spearhead between two fingers. Valder's centuries of combat experience prevented him from showing surprise, but the Emperor saw it. The fractional widening of the custodian's eyes, the micro-adjustment of stance when his weapon refused to budge. Valder pulled, pushed, twisted. The spear did not move. It was as if he'd embedded it in a mountain. That's a nice weapon, Saitama said conversationally. But you seem pretty serious about stabbing me, so? He flicked the spear gently. Valder flew backward 300 meters, tumbling across ash dunes before catching himself in a perfect three-point landing. His armor systems screamed damage warnings. 3 ribs fractured from the impact transferred through his weapon, internal bleeding detected. He'd been hit harder than Orc war bosses could manage, and the stranger had barely moved his wrist. The Emperor's psychic attention sharpened. Around him, reality began to crystallize as he focused his will. This required closer examination. He stepped forward, and when he did, the planet seemed to hold its breath. Psychic pressure rolled across the battlefield like a tsunami. Luna wolves with psychic sensitivity collapsed, bleeding from their helms. Baseline humans simply died, their minds unable to process the Emperor's unveiled majesty. Saitama felt it as weight, as if gravity had suddenly increased tenfold. Most beings would have been driven to their knees, souls crushed under the Emperor's regard. Saitama stood straight, looking mildly uncomfortable. That's a weird feeling, Saitama said, scratching his head. Like when you're underwater and your ears pop. The Emperor of Mankind, master of the Imperium, who had shattered alien empires with thought alone, intensified his psychic might. He reached out with his consciousness, trying to impose his will directly onto Saitama's mind. It was a gentle test. He had no desire to destroy potentially useful assets, but it should have paralyzed any living being not specifically engineered to resist. Nothing happened. The Emperor frowned. It was like pushing against a wall made of smooth, frictionless nothing. Not resistance that he could overcome. This was absence. Saitama's consciousness, if it existed at all, operated on principles that psychic power simply couldn't interact with. You truly have no connection to the warp, the Emperor said, genuine curiosity coloring his voice. How is that possible? All life resonates in the immaterium. All thought creates ripples in the sea of souls. You are silent, empty space in the shape of a man. I don't know what that means, Saitama admitted. I did a lot of training. Push-ups, sit-ups, running. Lost my hair. Got really strong. That's pretty much it. The Emperor stared at him. For a being who had shaped the course of human history for 40,000 years, who had planned civilizations across galactic timescales, the simplicity of that explanation was almost offensive. You became immune to psychic manipulation through exercise, I guess. Saitama shrugged. I just trained really hard every day until I broke through some kind of limit. After that, nothing really challenges me anymore. It's kind of boring, honestly. The Emperor's ancient mind raced through possibilities. Pariahs were soulless by genetics. Orcs achieved reality warping through collective belief. Tyranids adapted through biological evolution. But a human who simply trained until he transcended fundamental universal laws. It was absurd. It was impossible. The Emperor had learned to respect the impossible. Show me your strength, he commanded. That mountain. He pointed to a Ferris peak 10 kilometers distant, a slag heap from Gehenna Prime's mining operations that rose 8,000 meters high. Destroy it. Saitama looked at the mountain, then back at the Emperor. Really? That seems like it'd cause problems for people living here. The orcs inhabit that mountain. 2 million greenskins preparing to launch a counteroffensive. Destroying them was my next action. You claim to be a hero. Heroes destroy threats. The Emperor's tone was testing, probing Saitama's moral framework. Saitama sighed. He'd fought monsters, villains, aliens in his world. These orcs sounded similar. If they were attacking people, then yeah, that was hero work. Okay, but just that mountain, right? Don't want to break anything important. He walked forward casually, hands in his pockets, completely relaxed. The Luna wolves watched him approach the distant mountain, confusion radiating from their formations. Their targeting systems calculated time to target at current walking speed, 47 minutes. Saitama stopped walking. He pulled his right fist back, took a simple stance that any human could replicate, and punched. The air detonated. A shock wave erupted from his fist that carved a tunnel through the atmosphere, parting clouds and igniting oxygen in a contrail of fire that stretched from Saitama to the mountain in an instant. The sound came later, a crack like reality splitting at the seams. The mountain exploded. Not collapsed. Not destroyed. Exploded. 8,000 meters of ferrous rock and 2 million orcs simply ceased to exist in any meaningful form, atomized by kinetic energy that exceeded orbital bombardment. The shockwave flattened everything for kilometers, a perfect circular crater where a mountain range had existed seconds before. Saitama turned back. Like that. The Emperor of Mankind, who had conquered Mars and unified Terra, who had built an empire spanning the galaxy, allowed himself a moment of genuine shock. That casual punch had delivered firepower equivalent to his custodian's most powerful weaponry. No psychic enhancement. No technology. Just flesh and will. Across the Imperium's vast noospheric network, tech priests screamed binary prayers. Sensor data was impossible. Physics were violated. The Mechanicus's understanding of kinetic force could not explain what had occurred. Some declared it Xeno's witchcraft. Others fell to their knees, claiming the Omnisia had sent a messenger. A few simply went mad, trying to reconcile observation with reality. The Emperor raised one armored hand, silencing his forces. He approached Saitama directly, until they stood face to face, God Emperor and casual hero, psychic divinity and physical impossibility. Saitama, the Emperor said slowly, tasting the name. You are no threat I can eliminate with force. You are no weapon I can simply wield. You are a variable I did not account for. He smiled, and it was the smile of a conqueror who'd just found a worthy game piece. Walk with me. We must speak of the galaxy you've entered, the Emperor's
and what
command
role
ship,
you will play
the
in
Bucephalus,
humanity's survival.
hung in Gehenna Prime's orbit like a golden cathedral the size of a city. Saitama walked through corridors that could accommodate titans, surrounded by custodians who eyed him with the wariness of predators encountering something outside their classification. Servitors, lobotomized humans grafted to machines, shambled past carrying ammunition, their dead eyes tracking nothing. Saitama looked away from them, disturbed in ways he couldn't articulate. They entered the Emperor's Strategium, a vast chamber where hololithic displays showed the Great Crusade's progress across thousands of light years. Red markers indicated Xeno's empires crushed. Green showed compliant human worlds. Yellow marked targets awaiting imperial justice. The galaxy was being methodically conquered, sector by sector, with industrial efficiency. This is humanity's birthright, the Emperor explained, gesturing to the display. For 15,000 years, we were scattered, divided, prey to Xeno's predators and the darkness between stars. I reunited Terra, built the Imperium, created my legions to reclaim what was stolen. His voice carried absolute conviction. Every world we bring to compliance is one less pocket of humanity suffering under alien oppression. What about the aliens? Saitama asked. Do you just kill them all? Yes. The Emperor's response was immediate, unapologetic. The orcs exist only to wage war. The Eldar view humans as livestock. The Rangdan consumed entire worlds. In a galaxy this hostile, mercy is extinction. We survive or we die. There is no third option. Saitama frowned. He'd fought aliens in his world, some hostile, some just weird. The idea of killing entire species because they might be dangerous felt wrong, even if he understood the logic. But what if some of them aren't hostile? What if you could negotiate? I have walked this galaxy for longer than recorded history, the Emperor said, his psychic presence radiating certainty that bordered on religious fervor. I have seen Xeno's civilizations rise and fall. They have never viewed humanity as equals, only as tools or food. Coexistence is a naive dream. Survival demands strength. The Strategium doors opened with a hiss of pressurized air. 3 figures entered, and Saitama immediately recognized they were similar to the Emperor, but somehow less. Still superhuman, easily 3 meters tall, wearing armor that crackled with barely contained power, but they lacked the Emperor's overwhelming presence. Father, the first one said, his armor a rich crimson, his face aristocratic and impossibly perfect. You summoned the Primarchs. We came. His eyes flickered to Saitama with barely concealed fascination. Is this the anomaly? Sanguinius, the Emperor acknowledged. Yes, this is Saitama. A warrior from beyond our galaxy, delivered by the warp for purposes I am still determining. He gestured to the other 2. Robel Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists. Roblet Gilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines. My sons, meet someone who defies psychic law. Dorn studied Saitama with a builder's analytical gaze, measuring tolerances and structural integrity. Father, our sensors cannot classify him. Is he Xenos? Warp touched. Neither, the Emperor said. He is human. Somehow. Gilliman, ever the administrator, approached with measured caution. You destroyed the Gehenna mountain range with a single strike. Our logisticians calculated the energy output. It exceeds Titan-class weaponry. How? I just punched it, Saitama said. He was getting tired of explaining this. I trained really hard and got strong. That's all there is to it. Sanguinius, the most compassionate of the Primarchs, smiled slightly. Admirable simplicity. But father, why summon us? If this warrior is powerful, surely he can be integrated into the crusade. That is the question, the Emperor said. He turned to Saitama. I offer you a choice. Join the Great Crusade. Fight alongside my legions to reunite humanity and purge the Xenos filth that infests our galaxy. You possess power that could save billions of human lives. And if I say no? Saitama asked. The temperature in the strategium dropped. Custodians shifted stance imperceptibly. Dorn's hand drifted toward his chained word. Gilliman's eyes narrowed with tactical calculation. If this came to violence, how many casualties would they sustain neutralizing the target? Then you are a variable I cannot control, the Emperor said carefully. In a galaxy at war, neutrality is death. You stand with humanity, or you stand against it. There is no third option. Saitama felt the pressure of their expectations, the weight of being forced to choose sides in a war he didn't understand. Back home, being a hero meant protecting people, stopping monsters, maybe dealing with some annoying villain association. Here, heroism apparently meant genocide in the name of survival. I need to think about this, Saitama said. You're asking me to help kill entire species. I don't know if that's hero work. Hero, Dorn repeated, his voice granite hard. Antiquated terminology. In this age, there are only soldiers in humanity's war for existence. Father, Sanguinius interjected, his beautiful features troubled. Perhaps we move too quickly. Saitama has not witnessed what we face. Show him the Xenos threat. Let him understand why the crusade is necessary. The Emperor considered this. Sanguinius had inherited his creator's capacity for empathy, rare among the Primarchs. Perhaps the angel was right. Saitama needed to see the galaxy's horror before he could embrace the necessity of the Imperium's methods. Very well, the Emperor said. Gilliman, you are prosecuting compliance of the Xerxes sector. Saitama will accompany you. Show him what we fight against. Let him see why mercy is a luxury we cannot afford. He turned to Saitama. You claim to be a hero. Prove it. Save human lives. If you can do so without embracing our methods, I will accept your judgment. Saitama nodded slowly. That seemed fair. See what was actually happening, make an informed decision. Maybe these orc things really were just mindless monsters. Maybe the Imperium had good reasons for everything. But the servitor's dead eyes haunted him. The casual acceptance of mass death troubled him. And the Emperor's smile, that knowing, ancient smile that said he'd already calculated how this would end, made Saitama wonder if he was walking into a test designed to have only one outcome. When do we leave? Saitama asked. Immediately, Gilliman said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who commanded 500 worlds. The Xerxes sector faces Orkwyak. Grimtooth, 3 million greenskins preparing to assault human colonies. You will see the Xenos threat firsthand. As they left the strategium, Sanguinius fell into step beside Saitama. A word of advice, friend, the angel said quietly. My father's tests always have layers within layers. He does not offer choices. He guides you to the decision he has already determined you will make. Be wary. Is that a warning? Saitama asked. It is, Sanguinius said, his perfect face sad. Because I suspect even I do not know what he truly plans. The Ultramarines fleet translated from warp space above Xerxes 4 with practiced precision. Robot Gilliman's 13 Legion exemplified efficiency. Every ship positioned according to Codex doctrine, every weapon system pre-targeted, every strategic contingency planned 17 layers deep. Saitama stood on the bridge of the Makraj, watching through the massive viewport as a world burned below. Xerxes 4 had been an agricultural world before the orcs arrived. 7 billion humans worked vast grain fields that fed a dozen neighboring systems. Now the cities were burning, the fields trampled under crude orc fortifications, and orbital augurs detected biosigns consistent with 3 million greenskins preparing to launch looted spacecraft toward nearby colonies. The initial invasion came 6 months ago, Gilliman explained, his voice calm despite the atrocity unfolding beneath them. A space hulk deposited orc spores in the northern continent. They grew exponentially. By the time we received distress calls, half the population was dead. Our mission is simple, planetary extermination of the Xenos presence. What about survivors? Saitama asked, watching smoke plumes rise from ruined cities. 2 billion humans remain, clustered in fortified hive cities on the southern continent, Gilliman said. We will evacuate as many as logistics allow, then prosecute orbital bombardment to deny the orcs resources. Standard compliance protocol. Saitama turned from the viewport. Wait, you're going to bomb the planet? With people still on it. We will evacuate the defensible population centers, Gilliman repeated with patient precision. Approximately 300 million can be extracted before the orcs overrun our positions. The remaining civilians are beyond our capacity to save. Their deaths will be regrettable but necessary to prevent orc proliferation to neighboring systems. The numbers hit Saitama like a physical blow. 300 million saved. 1.7 billion left to die. Gilliman stated it like a logistics problem, a resource allocation issue, not the largest mass casualty event Saitama had ever heard described. You can't just abandon them, Saitama said. There has to be another way. There is not. Gilliman's tone remained infuriatingly reasonable. My legion numbers 100,000 Astartes. The orcs number 3 million and growing. Even with orbital support, a ground war would take years and cost tens of thousands of my warriors. The strategic calculus is clear. We save who we can, then sterilize the threat. I could help, Saitama offered. I could fight the orcs. All of them, if I have to. Gilliman studied him with eyes that saw logistics chains and strategic flowcharts. You destroyed a mountain. Impressive. But can you clear 3 million orcs spread across a continent in the hours before they overrun evacuation zones? Can you protect evacuating ships while simultaneously eliminating ground forces? Can you prevent orbital rock bombardment from orc warships while engaging their war boss? I mean, yeah. Saitama said. Probably. I'm pretty fast. Something flickered across Gilliman's perfect features. Not quite belief, but curiosity. The Primarch had conquered 100 worlds through unorthodox tactics when doctrine failed. Very well. Consider this your test. My father wishes to see what you can do. I will authorize your deployment. Succeed, and perhaps I will advocate for your integration into the crusade. Fail, and you will understand why we make the choices we make. Thunderhawks carried Saitama planetside alongside Ultramarines tactical squads, their blue armor gleaming with fresh paint and purity seals. Brother Sergeant Marius commanded the squad Saitama accompanied, his helmet displaying tactical data streams that would have overwhelmed baseline human cognition. Orcs are fungal organisms, Marius explained over Vox as they descended through atmospheric fire. They reproduce through spores released upon death. Individual greenskins are formidable, regenerative, strong, and growing larger with combat experience. Their largest specimen, Warboss Grimtooth, stands 5 meters tall and wields a power claw that can shear through Land Raider armor. So they're pretty tough? Saitama asked. They are Xenos filth, Marius corrected. But yes, formidable Xenos filth. The Thunderhawk's rear ramp dropped, and Saitama leapt out 3,000 meters above the battlefield. Wind screamed past him as he fell, the ground rushing up with terminal velocity that would liquefy baseline humans. He landed in the center of an orc war band with a thunderclap that cratered the earth, sending greenskins tumbling like bowling pins. Saitama's first impression of orcs was that they were big, green, and really excited about violence. His second impression, as 24 crude choppas swung at his head, was that they were also surprisingly fast and enthusiastic about teamwork when teamwork meant mob the new target. Oi, ease a humi what don't die. An orc bellowed, its tusked face split in what might have been a grin or a grimace. Let's crump, I am propa. Saitama sidestepped the first wave of attacks with minimal effort. The orcs were faster than humans, yes, but still fundamentally slow to someone who could casually outrun missiles. He tapped one orc on the forehead with a finger, just a tap, calibrated carefully, and it flew backward through 3 of its fellows, all of them tumbling in a heap of green flesh and crude armor. Sorry, Saitama said reflexively, but you guys are attacking people, so? He moved through the orc warband like a gardener pulling weeds. No wasted motion. No excessive force. Just enough pressure to incapacitate without unnecessary violence. It was almost therapeutic after the disturbing conversations aboard the Ultramarines vessel. These orcs were clearly hostile, attacking him immediately, fighting for the sake of fighting. Taking them down was honest hero work. Within 3 minutes, 200 orcs lay unconscious or retreating in confusion. Saitama barely broke a sweat. Brother Sergeant Marius watched through his helmet's augmented vision, Vox channel silent. The tactical data streaming from his armor's sensors contradicted 300 years of Codex doctrine. Single targets did not eliminate 200 orcs in 3 minutes. It was statistically, tactically, physically impossible. Lord Gilliman, Marius transmitted on command channel. The anomaly is performing as claimed. Orc casualties accumulating at rates exceeding company strength engagement protocols. On the Macridge's honor, Robot Gilliman permitted himself a moment of calculated optimism. Perhaps, for once, the impossible would prove useful rather than threatening. Perhaps Saitama could actually change the strategic equation. Then the war boss arrived. Grimtooth was 5 meters of scar tissue, scrap metal, and violent intent. His power claw crackled with barely contained energy fields, each finger a weapon capable of breaching tank armor. He'd fought through 3 Imperial Guard regiments and personally killed a dreadnought by ripping it apart with his bare hands. Behind him marched his personal retinue, knobs and mega armor, trucks mounted with big shuddas, and a squiggoth that roared with primal fury. "Air now," Grimtooth bellowed, his voice shaking the air. "Why was he to get crumpin' me, boys? I's he gonna make you into a trophy for me whack?" Saitama looked up at the massive orc warlord. In his world, he'd fought aliens who destroyed cities, monsters that threatened humanity's existence. This was similar energy. The orc radiated violent joy, absolutely certain that the next fight would be the best fight, living only for the eternal whack. "Look," Saitama said reasonably, "you're attacking a planet with people on it. That's not okay. I'm going to have to stop you." Grimtooth laughed, a sound like rock slides. "Why you gonna try, Hummy? That's proper stompin' talk." He charged, power claw raised, 3 tons of muscle and metal accelerating with terrifying speed. Died in 6 hours. Saitama punched him once. Saitama, the war boss, left a crater in the ground with methodical efficiency, dismantling their crude war machines, incapacitating their war bands, and systematically breaking their leadership structure. Every orc that charged him discovered that green fury meant nothing against simple, overwhelming physical superiority. Grimtooth himself tried to rise 4 times, his orcish biology regenerating damage that would have killed lesser creatures, before finally staying down, unconscious and defeated. The Ultramarines watched in disciplined silence as their tactical doctrine was rendered obsolete by a man in a yellow suit who treated planetary invasion like pest control. Gilliman deployed his forces to secure evacuation routes and establish perimeters, but the expected grinding siege warfare never materialized. Saitama simply walked through the continent, neutralizing threats with casual precision. By nightfall, 3 million orcs were dead, dying, or fleeing into wilderness where Imperial Guard mop-up operations would finish them systematically. The agricultural continent lay scarred but salvageable. And most critically, the projected civilian casualties of 1.7 billion had been reduced to 14 million, still horrific by any measure, but a preservation of life unprecedented in Imperium military history. Saitama returned to the evacuation zone covered in orc blood and dust, looking slightly tired. Around him, Ultramarines stared with expressions ranging from professional assessment to something approaching religious awe. Brother Sergeant Marius approached with ceremonial reverence. "You saved this world," Marius said, his voice carrying genuine respect. "8 billion lives preserved through your intervention. The Emperor protects, but today, you were his instrument." Saitama scratched the back of his head, uncomfortable with the religious tone. "I just did what heroes do. People needed help. I helped. No big deal." "No big deal," Marius repeated, as if testing the phrase. "You accomplished in hours what would have required years of campaign and millions of casualties. If this is what you call no big deal, then the Imperium has found a weapon beyond calculation." That word again. Weapon. Saitama frowned. He wasn't a weapon. He was a hero. There was a difference, even if these Ultramarines couldn't see it. Robot Gilliman descended from orbit aboard a Thunderhawk, his perfect features set in contemplative analysis. He surveyed the battlefield with a strategist's eye, orc fortifications dismantled, enemy forces scattered, civilian population centers intact. The strategic calculus had shifted fundamentally. "Remarkable," Gilliman said, approaching Saitama. "I witnessed the battle via orbital augers. You altered probability itself. What should have been a Pyrrhic victory became absolute triumph." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I will inform my father that you possess capability matching your claims. The question now is whether you will use that capability for humanity's benefit. That depends, Saitama said, his expression serious. You were going to bomb this planet. Kill billions of people because saving them was too hard. I prove there's another way. You prove that your unique capability allows for alternative strategies, Gilliman corrected. But you are one individual. The Great Crusade encompasses a million worlds. You cannot be everywhere. Most campaigns will still require conventional methodology, which includes accepting calculated losses. Then calculate better, Saitama said flatly. Find ways to save people instead of just writing them off as acceptable casualties. The Ultramarines within earshot tensed. Speaking to a Primarch with such directness bordered on insubordination. But Gilliman merely studied Saitama with renewed interest, as if examining a complex equation that refused to balance according to expected variables. You reject the Imperium's methods, Gilliman observed. Yet you saved an imperial world. You oppose our doctrine, yet you proved yourself in battle against Xeno's filth. You are a paradox, Saitama. My father specializes in resolving paradoxes. Before Saitama could respond, reality screamed. The air split open with colors that hurt to perceive, and a figure stepped through the warp rift with languid grace. He was tall, perfect, armored in purple and gold that gleamed with impossible sheen. His face was beautiful beyond human capacity, androgynous and hypnotic, and his eyes held the weight of millennia. Brother, the newcomer said, his voice like silk wrapped around broken glass. Father sent me to observe the anomaly. I confess, I'm disappointed I missed the performance. Gilliman's expression shifted to carefully controlled displeasure. Fulgrim, the Xerxes sector is 13 Legion territory. The Emperor's children have no jurisdiction here. Oh, jurisdiction. Fulgrim laughed, the sound carrying too many harmonics. Such tedious words from tedious robot. I'm not here to step on your toes, brother. Father simply wanted another perspective on our mysterious guest. He turned to Saitama, and those ancient eyes focused with predatory interest. You're the one who defies psychic law. How fascinating. Tell me, do you appreciate beauty? Perfection? The pursuit of absolute mastery. Something about Fulgrim made Saitama deeply uncomfortable. The Primarch radiated wrongness in ways Gilliman and the others didn't. Like looking at a painting that was almost perfect, but had one detail slightly, sickeningly off. I just do hero work, Saitama said carefully. Nothing special. Nothing special, Fulgrim repeated, amused. You reshape probability and call it nothing special. Such humility. Or perhaps, he leaned closer, studying Saitama like an artist examining a sculpture. Perhaps you simply don't recognize your own potential. Power without ambition. Strength without pride. What a waste. Fulgrim, Gilliman warned. The anomaly is not yours to recruit. Father has not determined his place in the crusade. Of course, Fulgrim said, stepping back with exaggerated deference. I merely observe. But tell me, Saitama, when you fought those orcs, did you feel anything? Joy, satisfaction, the thrill of perfect execution. I felt like I was doing my job, Saitama said. They were threatening people. I stopped them. That's all. Fulgrim's smile widened. That's all. You possess godlike power and treat it as casual employment. How magnificently perverse. He turned to Gilliman. Brother, I believe our father has found something truly unprecedented. This one doesn't seek glory or recognition. He simply acts. It's almost innocent. The way Fulgrim said innocent made it sound like a flaw to be corrected. As the Primarchs spoke, Saitama watched the evacuation continue around them. Millions of humans being loaded onto transport ships, their faces hollow with trauma, their lives saved but fundamentally shattered. The Imperium called this victory. These people would remember it as the day their world died. And Saitama understood, with sinking certainty, that this was what the galaxy offered. Choices between horrific options, victories measured in reduced casualties rather than preserved lives, and a grinding war where even triumph felt like defeat. The Emperor wanted him to embrace this, to become a weapon in an endless crusade, to trade casual heroism for calculated necessity. Saitama wasn't sure he could. The summons came 3 days later. Saitama was instructed to report to the Bucephalus immediately, where the Emperor awaited in his personal chambers, a space few had entered and fewer still discussed. Gilliman accompanied him, his expression troubled in ways the Primarch rarely displayed. "My father is displeased," Gilliman said as they walked through cathedral-sized corridors. "Your success on Xerxes IV was tactically valuable, but strategically problematic. You demonstrated that imperial doctrine can be circumvented through individual capability. That creates dangerous precedent." "I save people," Saitama said. "How is that a problem?" "Because the Imperium cannot be built on miracles," Gilliman explained with patience that barely concealed frustration. "Your intervention saved one world. We prosecute compliance across thousands simultaneously. If my warriors begin questioning doctrine because one anomalous individual achieved impossible results, the entire crusade fractures into chaos. Unity requires consistency, even when consistency demands sacrifice." They arrived at massive doors inscribed with symbols that hurt to perceive directly, psychic wards of such complexity that even looking at them induced headaches. Custodians flanked the entrance, their guardian spears crackling with barely restrained lethality. "He awaits you alone," one custodian said, his voice emotionless. "The Primarch will remain here." Gilliman placed one armored hand on Saitama's shoulder. "My father does not make idle gestures. If he has summoned you privately, he intends to resolve the question of your loyalty permanently. Be careful what you agree to." The doors opened with a sound like thunder compressed into whisper. Saitama stepped through into a chamber that defied spatial logic. Simultaneously vast and intimate, walls that seemed both near and infinitely distant. The Emperor stood at the chamber's center, his armor dimmed to reveal the being beneath. Tall, ageless, impossibly ancient, and utterly human in a way that transcended humanity. "Saitama," the Emperor said, his voice carrying no psychic weight now, just the timbre of a father speaking to a wayward son. "We must speak truthfully. No tests, no demonstrations. Just honesty between beings who do not fit the universe's comfortable categories." Saitama relaxed slightly. This felt more genuine than the posturing and military formality. "Okay, I'm listening. You believe I am evil." The Emperor stated it as fact, not accusation. "You see the Imperium's methods and judge them monstrous. The extermination of Xenos, the calculated sacrifice of civilian populations, the enforcement of absolute loyalty through fear and faith. You are not wrong." The admission startled Saitama. "Then why do it?" "Because I have walked this galaxy for 40,000 years, the Emperor said, and for the first time, Saitama heard genuine weariness in his voice. "I have witnessed every attempt at peaceful coexistence with Xenos fail catastrophically. I have seen human civilizations built on mercy and tolerance devoured by species that view compassion as weakness. The Eldar Empire fell to decadence and birthed a chaos god that consumed trillions. The orcs exist only to wage war. The Tyranids will eventually arrive to consume all biomass in the galaxy." He gestured, and hololithic images materialized. Worlds burning, humans enslaved by alien empires, colonies eaten by creatures that defied sanity, civilizations collapsing into madness as the warp spilled through reality's cracks. "I did not choose cruelty for its own sake," the Emperor continued. "I chose survival. Every brutal doctrine, every calculated atrocity, every sacrifice of billions to save trillions. These are not the actions of a tyrant drunk on power. They are the desperate measures of a species on the brink of extinction, led by the only being with vision spanning millennia enough to see what's necessary." "There has to be another way," Saitama insisted. "I proved it on Xerxes IV. You proved that your unique capability allows localized miracles," the Emperor corrected gently. "But you are one being. Can you defend a million worlds simultaneously? Can you prevent warp storms that isolate entire sectors? Can you hold back the darkness when even I cannot be everywhere at once?" The Emperor stepped closer, and Saitama felt the weight of those ancient eyes studying him with something approaching compassion. "I know what you were thinking. That perhaps if the Imperium tried harder, sacrificed less readily, valued individual lives more, we could find a better path." "You are right. In an ideal universe, we would. But this is not an ideal universe, the Emperor said, his voice hardening. This is a galaxy where gods made of emotion hunger for mortal souls, where entire species exist solely to kill and consume, where human nature itself spawns demons in a parallel dimension. I have spent 40 millennia trying to save humanity. Every gentle path I attempted led to annihilation. What you see as cruelty is the only methodology that has kept our species alive. Saitama absorbed this, wrestling with the terrible logic. He'd faced villains who threatened cities, monsters that endangered humanity. But those had clear solutions: punch the bad guy, save the day, go home. The Emperor was describing something more insidious, a universe structured to punish mercy, where the right choice led to extinction and the wrong choice was the only path to survival. So what do you want from me? Saitama asked. I want you to understand, the Emperor said simply. You possess power that could reshape the Crusade's trajectory. But power without wisdom is worse than useless. It's dangerous. You could save individual worlds while inadvertently dooming the species. I need to know, will you accept that sometimes heroism means making choices that haunt you forever? I don't know, Saitama admitted. Back home, being a hero was simple. Bad guys appeared, I stopped them. Here, everyone seems like they're both the good guys and the bad guys at the same time. That is because they are, the Emperor said. In a galaxy at war, morality becomes fluid. The question is not good versus evil, but survival versus extinction. I am offering you a place in that survival. Not as a weapon, as an ally. Someone who can save lives when doctrine fails, who can accomplish the impossible when strategy reaches its limits. And if I refuse? Saitama asked. The Emperor's expression shifted, not threatening, but infinitely sad. Then you become a variable I cannot control. And variables that threaten human survival must be eliminated, regardless of cost. The air pressure changed. Reality crystallized as the Emperor's true power manifested, no longer carefully contained. Psychic might that could shatter planets. Well, that had conquered Mars and unified Terra, consciousness vast enough to perceive futures branching across probability, all of it focused on Saitama with surgical precision. I do not wish to fight you, the Emperor said, his voice resonating across dimensions. But I will do what is necessary. Always. That is what leadership means in this nightmare age. So I ask one final time, will you stand with humanity, accepting all that entails? Or must I treat you as a threat to be neutralized? Saitama felt the psychic pressure building, reality warping around the Emperor's unveiled majesty. In his world, he'd never met anyone who could genuinely challenge him. Here, for the first time in years, he faced someone who might actually be dangerous. Not because the Emperor was stronger, Saitama still didn't know if anything could overcome his limitless physical might. But because the Emperor was willing to commit absolutely everything to achieve his goals, including sacrificing himself if necessary to eliminate a threat to humanity's survival. If I say yes, Saitama said slowly, do I have to follow orders that feel wrong? Kill people who don't deserve it? Become just another weapon in your arsenal? No, the Emperor said, and the psychic pressure eased slightly. You will have autonomy. Make your own judgments. Save lives where you can. I only ask that you understand the constraints we operate within, and that when you choose mercy, you accept responsibility for the consequences. It was the closest thing to a fair deal Saitama had heard since arriving in this grim darkness. Not perfect, not comfortable, but honest in its way. And if we fight instead? Saitama asked, genuinely curious. The Emperor smiled, and it was the smile of a warrior who had fought for 40,000 years and never truly met an equal. Then we discover if psychic divinity can overcome physical impossibility. One way or another, the question will be resolved. Saitama considered this. He could feel the Emperor's power building, reality itself bending around the master of mankind's will. This wasn't a threat, it was a statement of absolute commitment. The Emperor would do what he believed necessary, no matter the cost to himself. Just like Saitama would do what he believed was right, no matter the cost. I guess we're going to find out, Saitama said, raising his fist. The Emperor's eyes flashed with something that might have been his body remained anticipation, or
but
perhaps
psychically,
both, his consciousness striking like a hammer forged from stars. Saitama felt it as pressure, as weight, as the sensation of reality itself insisting that he kneel, that he surrender, that he acknowledge the master of mankind's absolute authority. Saitama stood straight. The Emperor's eyes widened fractionally. He intensified the psychic assault, layering compulsions and mental dominance techniques refined across 40 millennia. He had broken alien warlords with this approach, shattered Xeno's empires by dominating their leaders' minds, forced demons to flee screaming back into the warp. Against Saitama, it accomplished nothing. You truly are immune, the Emperor said, genuine fascination coloring his tone. Not resistant, immune. The warp cannot touch you. How is that possible? I don't know, Saitama said. I just trained until I was strong enough that nothing could stop me. I guess that included mind stuff. The Emperor shifted tactics. If direct psychic assault failed, then indirect applications would suffice. He reached out with his vast consciousness and seized reality itself, the physics governing the chamber, the fundamental forces keeping atoms together, the very fabric of space-time. He twisted. The chamber collapsed inward, space folding upon itself with crushing force that should have compressed Saitama into atomic paste. The Emperor had used this technique to destroy orc war moons, to seal warp rifts, to unmake threats that conventional weaponry couldn't touch. Saitama punched the collapsing space. Reality shattered like glass. The spatial distortion exploded outward in fragments of broken physics, and the chamber's walls cracked as impossible forces warred within its confines. Saitama stood in a small pocket of normal space, completely unharmed, his fists still extended. That was weird, Saitama said. Did you just try to crush me with space? Yes, the Emperor said, and he laughed, a sound of pure delight that rang like cathedral bells. You are magnificent. You don't resist reality manipulation. You simply hit it until it stops. It's absurd. It shouldn't work. And yet it does. He raised both hands, and golden light erupted from his palms. Raw psychic fire that had burned demon princes, cleansed corrupted worlds, and annihilated enemies by the thousands. The flames roared toward Saitama, heat intense enough to vaporize ceramite. Saitama walked through them. The psychic fire parted around him like water around a stone, unable to gain purchase on whatever fundamental principle made Saitama invincible. He emerged from the inferno completely unsinged, his yellow suit not even smoking. Okay, my turn, Saitama said. He moved. One moment, he stood 50 meters away. The next, his fist was inches from the Emperor's face, having crossed the distance faster than psychic precognition could process. The Emperor barely managed to raise a telekinetic barrier, a shield of solidified willpower that could stop tank shells. Saitama's punch shattered it. The Emperor flew backward, crashing through the chamber wall into the corridor beyond. Custodians immediately surrounded their fallen master, guardian spears raised, but the Emperor waved them back. He stood, golden armor cracked across the chest plate, and his expression showed something rarely seen on the master of mankind's face, genuine surprise. You damaged my armor, the Emperor said, touching the cracked ceramite. In 40,000 years, few have managed that. You are truly limitless. I don't know about limitless, Saitama said, walking through the hole his punch had created. I just got really strong. Strong enough that nothing's challenged me in years. The Emperor studied him with new understanding. You're lonely, invincible, isolated by your own success. Every enemy falls too easily. Every challenge becomes trivial. You came here seeking purpose, and instead found a galaxy that wants to use you as a weapon. Saitama blinked, caught off guard by the sudden empathy. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Then let me offer you something different, the Emperor said, his voice softening. Not commands, not servitude, but partnership. You seek worthy challenges? This galaxy will provide them. Demon princes that reform after death. Orc war bosses whose belief makes them invincible. Tyrannid hive ships that can adapt to any threat. Tan shards that manipulate reality itself. He gestured, and hololithic displays materialized, showing horrors beyond imagination. Chaos abominations that defied physical law. Necron technology that could unmake stars. threats so vast that even Saitama's overwhelming might would be tested. "Fight alongside me," the Emperor said. "Not as my weapon, but as my equal. Save lives when you can. Make your own judgments about what's necessary. I will not compel your loyalty. I will earn it through honesty about what we face." Saitama considered this. The Emperor had tried to dominate him, failed, then immediately shifted to respect. It was pragmatic, calculating, but also honest. The master of mankind wasn't pretending friendship. He was offering alliance between beings who didn't fit normal categories. "And if I disagree with your orders?" Saitama asked. "Then we debate. Perhaps you'll convince me. Perhaps I'll convince you. Perhaps we'll agree to disagree and each pursue our own path." The Emperor smiled. "I have commanded for 40,000 years. It might be refreshing to work with someone who can tell me no and survive the experience." Before Saitama could respond, alarms screamed throughout the Bucephalus. Custodians snapped to combat readiness. The Emperor's expression shifted from philosophical to tactical in an instant, his consciousness reaching out across the fleet. "Warp breach," he said. "Something is forcing its way into real space. Something vast." They ran to the bridge. Or rather, Saitama ran, and the Emperor teleported in a flash of golden light. The viewport showed a tear in reality, vomiting impossible colors into the void. Ships were translating from the warp, but not Imperial vessels. These were corrupted, wrong, covered in sigils that hurt to perceive, and flying in formations that defied strategic sense. "Chaos," the Emperor said, his voice cold with ancient hatred. "The ruinous powers have taken notice of our confrontation. They send their servants to investigate." At the fleet's center emerged a vessel that dwarfed even the Bucephalus, a baroque nightmare of twisted metal and screaming faces, its hull pulsing with unnatural life. Psychic energy radiated from it in waves that drove unshielded crew members mad. "That's impossible," Constantine Valder said, his voice tight with controlled horror. "That's the vengeful spirit, the War Master's flagship. But the heresy hasn't. The warp does not respect linear time," the Emperor said grimly. "Something has reached backward, or forward, or sideways across probability to pull that vessel here. And if the ship is here..." A figure materialized on the bridge's main view screen. He wore armor similar to the Emperor's, but corrupted, its beauty twisted into blasphemy. His face was perfect and terrible, bearing resemblance to Fulgrim, but older, more ruined, absolutely saturated with chaos corruption. For symbols blazed behind him, marks of the 4 chaos gods. "Father," the figure said, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested insanity. "You found something interesting. A being immune to the warp? How delicious. How perfect. I simply had to investigate." The Emperor's psychic presence exploded with barely contained rage. "Horus, you are not yet born to betrayal. This is a time paradox. What madness have the dark gods wrought? Does it matter?" Horus Lupercal, War Master of Chaos, laughed. "Time, space, causality, all are toys for the powers. I've come for your new friend. The gods wish to meet him, to test if he's as incorruptible as you hope." Saitama looked at the corrupted Primarch on the screen, then at the Emperor. "Is that one of your sons?" "He will be," the Emperor said quietly, "and he will break my heart." Saitama fought in the void between ships, where physics became suggestion and demons manifested with increasing frequency. A bloodthirster, 12 meters of brass armor and burning rage, swung an axe that had cleaved Imperial knights in half. Saitama caught the blade, yanked it from the demon's grip, and tossed it into the warp. The bloodthirster stared at its empty hands in confusion before Saitama's punch dispersed its corporeal form. Khorne will not forget this insult. It roared as it dissolved. "Cool," Saitama said to no one in particular. He really could hold his breath for a long time. More demons swarmed him, Lord of Change wielding sorceries that rewrote probability, great unclean ones spreading corruption with every gesture, keepers of secrets offering pleasure that would destroy mortal minds. Saitama treated them all the same, obstacles to be removed with minimal fuss. His punches scattered their essence, his kicks shattered their forms, and his complete immunity to warp influence meant their most powerful weapons, temptation, corruption, madness, accomplished nothing. The Emperor watched from the Bucephalus, his psychic sight tracking Saitama's progress through the demon swarm. Around him, custodians fought with desperate precision, tech priests chanted binary prayers, and bridge crew maintained fire discipline despite the horror unfolding. This was what Imperial victory looked like, bought with blood, faith, and uncompromising will. "Father," Constantine Volder said, his voice tight with strain as he bisected a pink horror. "The anomaly fights well, but we cannot sustain this assault. The vengeful spirit is deploying boarding parties. Traitor Astartes from a future that has not yet occurred." "I know," the Emperor said. "Horus seeks to test Saitama's incorruptibility by exposing him to chaos at its most seductive. The War Master believes everyone has a price. He has forgotten what genuine conviction looks like." Through the Vox-corrupted channels, Horus's voice echoed. "Saitama, you fight so beautifully. Such strength, such speed. But you fight alone, for a species that will never appreciate your sacrifice. Join us. The gods offer brotherhood among equals, power without restraint, freedom from my father's prison of necessity." Saitama, drifting in void while punching demons, actually considered this for a moment. Not because the offer tempted him, but because he was trying to understand the logic. These chaos things kept talking about power and freedom like they were good arguments, but from what he'd seen, they just wanted to hurt people and spread corruption. "No thanks," he shouted into vacuum, not caring if anyone heard. "I'm good." A massive form emerged from the vengeful spirit. Horus himself, teleporting into void, his corrupted armor surrounded by a bubble of twisted reality that allowed him to breathe, speak, and move as if space was atmosphere. He was huge, even by Primarch standards, swollen with chaos power. His eyes burned with the light of all four gods. "Then let me show you what you're rejecting," Horus said, raising his warp claw, a weapon that had murdered the Emperor in another timeline, in another probability. "I am what your precious Emperor's sons become when freed from his tyranny. I am apotheosis. I am divinity unchained." He swung the claw, and reality tore. Not metaphorically. Actual space-time ripped open, revealing the raw warp beneath. Demons poured through in endless tide, and the sheer psychic weight of chaos focused on this single point in space. Saitama punched the reality tear closed. Horus stared. The chaos gods, watching through their champion's eyes, stared. The Emperor, from his distant bridge, allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. "That's not supposed to be possible," Horus said. "You just hit the warp." And it listened. "I hit lots of things," Saitama said. "Usually they stop being problems after that." Horus laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. "You are magnificent. I must have you." The gods demanded. He charged, warp claw extended, moving with speed that blurred even in void. Saitama met him head-on. The collision between chaos-empowered Primarch and limitless hero created a shockwave that rocked ships kilometers distant. They exchanged blows at speeds that made light seem sluggish. Horus wielding millennia of combat experience and the blessing of four dark gods. Saitama simply hitting things until they stopped moving. Horus was faster than any opponent Saitama had faced in this galaxy. More skilled. The War Master's precognition saw attacks before they were thrown, his combat instincts honed across 10,000 years of war. He wove around Saitama's strikes, countered with precision that should have been fatal. But eventually, inevitably, one punch landed. Horus flew backward, crashing into the vengeful spirit with enough force to crater the corrupted hull. His armor, artifact-grade and chaos-blessed, cracked across the chest. He coughed blood into his helm, for God's worth of power barely keeping him conscious. "How?" Horus gasped. "I am ascended. I am beyond mortality. You are just human." "I trained really hard," Saitama said, floating toward him. "And I didn't make deals with demons to do it." Horus looked at this bald man in a ridiculous yellow suit who had just defeated a war master of chaos through simple, honest effort. And for the first time since his fall, Horus Lupercal felt something approaching regret. "You are what I could have been. What all the Primarchs could have been, if we'd simply remained pure." "It's not too late," Saitama said, extending his hand. "You could stop this. Help people instead of hurting them." For one moment, one crystalline instant, Horus almost took that hand. Almost remembered what it meant to be a hero rather than a slave to dark gods. Almost chose redemption. Then the chaos god seized his will completely, and Horus screamed. His form began to dissolve, pulled backward through time, the paradox of his existence here resolving itself as the warp reclaimed its champion. This isn't over. Horus roared as he faded. The gods have seen you. They will never stop hunting you. Never. The corrupted fleet vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, pulled back into whatever temporal impossibility had birthed it. Reality sealed itself, and suddenly the void was simply void again, still deadly, still cold, but no longer actively malicious. The Emperor's psychic voice touched Saitama's mind gently, without compulsion. Return to the ship. You have earned answers. Saitama punched his way back through vacuum, wondering if this was what heroism meant in this nightmare galaxy. Fighting corrupted versions of heroes who'd lost their way, in a war that never truly ended, for a species that barely remember. The strategium was quiet after the Chaos Fleet's departure. Damage control teams worked throughout the vessel, servitors hauling debris, tech priests reciting benedictions over wounded machines. The Emperor sat in a throne that had materialized seemingly from nowhere, or perhaps had always been there and was simply ignored until needed. Saitama stood before him, tired in ways that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. You saved my fleet, the Emperor said simply. You defeated a demon swarm, fought greater Neverborn to stand still, and repelled a Primarch empowered by all four ruinous powers. In one battle, you accomplished what entire legions struggle to achieve across years. I just did what needed doing, Saitama said. Those things were attacking people. That's what heroes stop. Heroes, the Emperor repeated thoughtfully. He gestured, and the strategium's displays shifted to show Xerxes IV, the world Saitama had saved. Billions of people rebuilding their lives, agriculture resuming, children playing in streets that had been war zones. You preserved that. Because of your intervention, those lives continue. That is heroism, I suppose. He shifted the display to another world, one consumed by tyranids, its population devoured to the last child, its biomass converted to fuel for an unstoppable swarm. This is what happens when heroes are absent, when the impossible intervention doesn't arrive, when reality follows its brutal logic. I can't be everywhere, Saitama said quietly. No, the Emperor agreed. You cannot. And that is the Imperium's eternal dilemma. How to save 1,000,000 worlds when miracles are in short supply. But you have shown me something valuable, that perhaps my methods, while necessary in aggregate, need not be applied universally. Where you can intervene, lives can be saved that I would have calculated as acceptable losses. The Emperor stood, his full height impressive even to someone who'd fought Primarchs. I will not compel your service, Saitama. You have proven yourself beyond my capacity to control through force. But I ask, as one warrior to another, will you help me? Not as weapon, not as slave, but as ally in an impossible war. Saitama thought about everything he'd witnessed. The Imperium's brutality, the chaos threat, the casual acceptance of mass death, the servitors' dead eyes, the impossible choices between horrific options. And then he thought about the faces of people on Xerxes IV, alive because he'd chosen to fight for them. I'll help, Saitama said finally. But on my terms. I save people when I can. I don't follow orders that feel wrong. And I'm going to keep looking for better ways to do things, even if you think there aren't any. The Emperor smiled. Not the calculated smile of a god emperor, but the genuine expression of a being who'd just found an unexpected ally. Those are acceptable terms. You will operate independently, responding to threats as you see fit. When our philosophies align, we fight together. When they conflict, we debate. But know this, the galaxy will test you. Chaos will hunt you. Xenos will target you. And humans will misunderstand you. Heroism here is thankless, brutal, and often futile. Sounds like regular hero work, Saitama said. Just with more space stuff. Indeed. The Emperor extended his hand, not in domination or command, but in fellowship. Welcome to the Great Crusade, Saitama. May your simple conviction survive the complexity of the galaxy you've entered. Saitama shook his hand, careful not to apply too much pressure. One question though. That Horus guy said he was your son, but from the future? How does that work? The emperor's expression darkened. A prophecy I have striven 40,000 years to prevent. My sons will betray me. The Imperium will fracture. Humanity will endure 10,000 years of stagnation and decay. I have seen it in probabilities branches, fought to change it with every decision. And now I'm here, Saitama said. Does that change things? Perhaps, the emperor said. Or perhaps you are simply another variable in an equation whose solution remains tragedy. Time will tell. He gestured to the viewport, where stars stretched infinite and cold. Go, Saitama. Find your battles. Save your lives. Be the hero you believe this galaxy needs. Saitama nodded and turned to leave. Then he paused. One more thing. Those servitor things. The cyborg people with dead eyes. That bothers me. They are lobotomized criminals and vat-grown clones, the emperor explained. The Mechanicus requires workers who cannot rebel, question, or make mistakes. It is efficient. It's cruel, Saitama said flatly. Find another way. There is no. The emperor began, then stopped. He studied Saitama's expression, saw the simple, unwavering conviction there. I will consider alternatives. You have my word that I will investigate less brutal methodologies for automated labor. It was a small concession, one tiny crack in the Imperium's brutal edifice. But it was more than nothing, and Saitama would take it. As he walked through the corridors toward the hangar bay where a Thunderhawk would carry him to his next deployment, custodians nodded in respect. Space Marines of various legions studied him with curiosity. Baseline humans whispered prayers, calling him the Emperor's Fist or the Angel of Impossible Victory. Saitama ignored them all. He wasn't a symbol or a weapon or an angel. He was just a guy who wanted to help people, dropped into a galaxy that had forgotten what that meant. Somewhere in the warp, the Chaos Gods watched and schemed. They had failed to corrupt him, failed to kill him, failed to understand him. That made him dangerous. That made him priority target. Already they were crafting new temptations, new traps, new horrors specifically designed to break his simple conviction. And on Terra, in the depths of the Imperial Palace that didn't yet exist, the Emperor's psychic consciousness touched a future he'd been trying to prevent. He saw the heresy unfold differently this time. Saw Saitama's casual heroism disrupting carefully laid chaos plans. Saw variables shifting, probabilities realigning. Maybe, just maybe, the galaxy's future wasn't fixed. Saitama boarded the Thunderhawk with a single bag of belongings. He'd insisted on keeping his civilian clothes, which the Mechanicus had preserved with religious fervor after analyzing their impossibly durable construction. The pilot, a Luna Wolf sergeant, spoke over internal vox. Hero Saitama, our orders are to deploy you wherever Imperial forces face overwhelming odds. Lord Gilliman has designated you Strategic Asset Sigma. You'll operate independently, respond to distress calls, do what you do best. What I do best is grocery shopping, Saitama muttered. But I guess saving people comes second. The Thunderhawk launched, carrying him toward the next impossible battle in a galaxy full of them. Behind him, the Emperor's fleet continued the Great Crusade, bringing compliance through fire and faith. Ahead of him, a million worlds waited, some to be saved, some to be damned, all of them needing a hero who didn't exist yet. But now he did. And in the grim darkness of the far future, where there was only war, one man punched monsters and saved lives because that's what heroes did. It was honest work. Saitama's presence in the Warhammer 40K universe became legend within a single year of the Great Crusade. Worlds facing extinction were saved by a figure in yellow who appeared from nowhere, dispersed threats with casual efficiency, then vanished to the next crisis. The Administratum struggled to categorize him. Not Legion, not Primarch, not Sanctioned Psyker, yet operating with the Emperor's implicit blessing. Some called him Angel. Others whispered Xenos. The truth was simpler and stranger. A hero who trained until he broke reality's limitations, now fighting in a galaxy that punished heroism with indifference and measured victories in reduced casualties rather than preserved lives. The Chaos Gods continued hunting him, sending champions and corruption and temptations specifically crafted to break his simple conviction. They all failed. Saitama couldn't be corrupted because he didn't want anything chaos offered. Not power, not sensation, not knowledge, not glory. He just wanted to help people. In a galaxy built on ambition and desperation, that immunity proved absolute. The Emperor watched his progress with calculated interest. This variable he couldn't predict or control. Saitama saved lives the Imperium would have written off as acceptable losses. He found alternatives when doctrine demanded sacrifice. He remained stubbornly, impossibly optimistic in a nightmare universe. And perhaps that was what the galaxy needed most. Not another weapon, not another god, but someone who remembered what it meant to simply do the right thing, even when the right thing seemed futile. The Horus Heresy was coming. The Emperor knew it with certainty born from 40,000 years of psychic foresight. His sons would betray him. The Imperium would fracture. Humanity would endure millennia of darkness. But now, one variable had changed. One impossible hero walked the galaxy, defying chaos through simple conviction and saving lives through limitless strength. Would it be enough to change fate? The Emperor didn't know. For the first time in 40,000 years, he truly didn't know. And somewhere in the warp, the Chaos Gods raged, because they didn't know either. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But now, impossibly, there was also hope.